welcome you to this short Bible study on prophecy. And we're going to be looking at two Greek words, telos and santilia, and trying to find an answer to the question, what is the end? And this will be another piece in the Bible prophecy puzzle to help shed some light and give some understanding in the discussion that has been going back and forth within the church for a long time concerning the pre trib or post trib rapture. We start in Matthew 24:3. As Jesus sat upon the Mount of Olives, the disciples came unto him privately, saying, Tell us, when shall these things be? What shall be the sign of thy coming, and of the end of the world? They were talking about the timing of the destruction of the temple, when the temple in Jerusalem would be destroyed, as Jesus had predicted. Not one stone will be left upon another. They were asking about the sign of Christ's coming. They were curious about Jesus returning and what that meant for them. And the end of the world. They sought to understand details of the end of the world relative to Jewish prophecies of the Old Testament, such as in the writings of Daniel. In the context of their conversation, the disciples expected for Jesus to use terminology that they were familiar with, terms and words within their cultural and linguistic framework. They spoke Greek. Santilia and telos were two words that they understood quite well. The King James Version translates several Greek words as end. We shall examine two important Greek words in our study. And we do this to seek an answer to the question asked at the beginning, what is the end? Centillia means consummation. It can refer to the end of an age or an end of a defined period. Example is the harvest is the centillia of the world. You see that in Matthew 13:39. The harvest is the end of the world. Telos often means goal or purpose. It's used to signify the ultimate outcome or completion of something. Example, the gospel shall be preached in all the world, then shall the telos come, the end. Matthew 24:14. Very similar, but not exactly the same. The disciples asked Jesus about the centillia, meaning the conclusion of the age. They would anticipate Jesus to continue using that same term in his response, which indeed he did. Jesus had already taught on this topic, and we look at some previous parables of Jesus. Matthew 13. Again, the kingdom of heaven is like unto a net that was cast into the sea, and gathered of every kind, which when it was full, they drew to shore, sat down, and gathered the good into vessels, but cast the bad away. So shall it be at the centillia of the world, the end of the world. Again, we see the teachings of Jesus in Matthew 13:40. Therefore the tares are gathered and burned in the fire. So shall it be at the centillia of the world, the end of the world. Now we turn to the prophecy of Jesus in Matthew 24:6 and the use of telos in the prophecy. You shall hear of wars, rumors of wars. See that you be not troubled, for all these things must come to pass, but the end is not yet. What is the Greek word there? Speaking of the wars and rumors of wars, it's telos, not centillia, but it's translated end. The use of telos again in the prophecy of Jesus in Matthew 24:13. He that shall endure unto the end the same shall be saved. What is the Greek word there? It's telos, not centillia. And again, Matthew 24:14, this gospel of the kingdom shall be preached in all the world for a witness unto all nations. Then shall the end. The end is telos. And so this is speaking of things having to do with the completion of the task of the church. Okay, once again, we look at this graphic showing the Greek and the English dictionaries. And we're looking at how two Greek words were translated into one English word in the King James Version. These two Greek words were separate in the Greek dictionary and in the mind of the Greek speakers. Telos and Santilia were not the same word. But as they made the journey into the English language, something interesting happened. Now, the disciples would not have been aware of how the two Greek words would someday be translated into the same English word. They did not consider these two Greek words to be interchangeable. But in English, in the King James Version, we only have one word, end. This is a problem. What we want to do now is look at a couple days within the last week of the life of Jesus Christ. On Tuesday, Jesus spoke to his disciples as recorded in Matthew 24. And then on Thursday, he had another discussion with his disciples, and we find that recorded in John 14. The context for Matthew 24 again is the Olivet Discourse, where Jesus spoke to his disciples from the Mount of Olives. And we see some of it here. The disciples came to Jesus privately, saying, Tell us, when shall be the sign of thy coming and of the end of the world? We're looking at that phrase, the end of the world, where Santilia was used. You shall hear wars, rumors of wars, Jesus said. See that you be not troubled, for all these things must come to pass. But he used a different Greek word here, not to confuse the disciples. He didn't say Santilia. He said, but the telos is not yet. But he that shall endure to the telos, the same shall be saved. This gospel of the kingdom shall be preached in all the world for a witness to all nations. Then shall the telos come. Not an answer to the question, when is the Santilia of the world? Now we go to John 14. A couple days later, the context, it's the farewell discourse Jesus gives to his disciples during the Last Supper, shortly before his arrest and crucifixion. And we look at some of the words. Jesus is comforting his disciples. He had just talked to them about these things, the end of the world, the destruction of the temple, and all of that. And now he says, don't worry so much. Let not your heart be troubled. You believe in God, believe also in me. In my Father's house are many mansions. If it were not so, I would have told you. I go to prepare a place for you. And if I go and prepare a place for you, I will come again. Now, this something that they had just discussed. What shall be the sign of thy coming? And I will receive you unto myself, that where I am, there ye may be also. He helped them to understand that at the coming of the Lord, it was the coming for his disciples. And so we see in Matthew 24 and in John 14, the return of Jesus for his disciples. He has a place prepared, and he's going to bring them to that place prepared. We call it heaven. But now we look into the other words, Santilia and telos, each in the King James Version translated the end. To wrongly identify the end of the age, Santilia, as being the same as another Greek word Jesus used, telos, simply because the King James translators rendered it as end, is an error that can lead to a wrong understanding of this vital teaching of Jesus. The end, telos, we refer to in this study is found in Matthew 24:14, and it relates to the completion of the task of preaching the gospel to all nations, not the end of the world. The completion of the task of preaching the gospel to all nations. It's vital to consider the distinction of these two Greek words to gain a clear understanding of the passages. This shows the need for a Greek word study to avoid oversimplifying the disciples' complex questions and Jesus' comprehensive answers. Simplify. In the Gospel of Matthew, the disciples clearly understood that the Greek word sotelia was in reference to the end of the world. Matthew 24, the use of the Greek word telos was in reference to the finishing of a task. Jesus' use of a different Greek word like telos and sotelia can be seen as a nuanced approach to convey a broader understanding. We must not lose that meaning. Both terms can relate to end. In English, telos emphasizes the goal or completion of a task, the gospel being preached, whereas sotelia in Jesus' teaching encompassed the broader concept of the culmination of an age. This distinction would have been meaningful to Greek-speaking audiences of the time. Jesus' choice of words would have resonated with their expectations and understanding, providing them with a more comprehensive picture of the events he was describing. Well, why is this important? Well, in Matthew 24:14, we can translate telos as completion of the task to get a better understanding of the meaning of the words used by Jesus. Let's do that. Many false prophets shall rise, shall deceive many. Because iniquity shall abound, the love of many shall wax cold. But he that shall endure to the completion of the task, the same shall be saved. Run the race to the end, would be another way of saying it. This gospel of the kingdom shall be preached in all the world, for a witness to all nations. Then shall the task be done. Why is this important? Oh, in Matthew 28:19, Jesus commissioned the church with a great task to preach the gospel to the whole world. When this task is completed, then the church is to be removed. This is the resurrection or the rapture. That's what the end is that Jesus was describing. This is the telos. After this, the Antichrist is revealed because the restrainer has been taken out of the way. Why is this important? Well, there's two different timelines that we need to look at. There's Israel, and they're on an Old Testament timeline concerning the prophecies as given to men like Daniel. And that comes to a completion at the sotelia, at the end of the world. Whereas the church is on a completely different timeline, which we began with the death of Jesus Christ, the resurrection, the ascension, and the outpouring of the Holy Spirit in Acts chapter 2. And we continue our work of preaching the gospel to the entire world until the telos, the end, when we are finished running the race. You'll notice they don't begin at the same time, neither do they end at the same time. Once again, why is this important? Well, Paul writes in 2 Thessalonians chapter 2, and now ye know what withholdeth. Well, it means holds down, that he, the Antichrist, might be revealed in his time. For the mystery of iniquity does already work. Only he who now holds down will hold down until he be taken out of the way or removed. Three words there: withhold, letteth, let, all from the same Greek word, meaning hold down. Then shall that wicked be revealed, whom the Lord shall consume with the spirit of his mouth and shall destroy with the brightness of his coming. The task of spreading the gospel is the restrainer that holds down or keeps the wicked one, the Antichrist, from coming to power. That's why it's important. Well, we've been assembling another piece of the prophecy puzzle. Study about rapture, departure, restrainer, gathering, promises, revelation, trumpets, Noah's Ark, taken. All of these you will find in 18 lessons on prophecy on my YouTube site. There you will find over 100 videos on Bible teaching. Go to the Mel Berglund channel, the Mel Berglund. I found out that there's more than one Mel Berglund, and so I'm the Mel Berglund. And while you're there, can I encourage you to subscribe to our channel? Thank you very much.